Excellent. Thank you so much, Marian. I appreciate you having us here. And let me just get to the screen share. All right, how does that look? Can you see my slides?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, okay, great. I thought I lost you for
We're
a
all
minute.
muted. We're all muted.
Perfect. Great. So yes, so Marian invited Ramstead to participate in your evening tonight, and I just want to thank you for that. And I was really excited that she wanted to hear about exactly what we do, which is nourishing the planet and the people through agriculture. And the type of agriculture we practice, which is regenerative agriculture, where our focus is to not only raise healthy animals, but raise them in a way that actually benefits the land, not just sustains the land. So we like to think regenerative agriculture is on the build, and we're actually able to heal the land through the animals' natural activities, their tendencies, and their natural behaviors, so that they can be happier and they can have a symbiotic relationship with the land that they evolved to be a part of. And with that, not only are we contributing to the health of the land, but we're contributing to the health of the people who enjoy the foods that land produces. So I'll kind of get into the details here as we go. Quick introduction to Ramstead Ranch. We are located up in Ione, Washington, and that is the far northeast corner of Washington state. So we're almost in Idaho, we're almost in Canada. We're about 70 miles north of Spokane is our closest big city. And Ramstead today is comprised of 240 acres. But like Marianne said, we started as a 2-acre backyard operation. And we just wanted to learn and wanted to know and do it ourselves and learn what it was all about. And it went so well that we've grown into what Ramstead Ranch is today. And we've done every step along the way. So from homestead all the way up to a thriving business where we now have employees that you'll get to kind of meet here. So this is, these are the three of us, Stan and Jean, who are also on the call, and me, Eileen. And we're the 3 owner operators of the ranch. We live here every day. This is our backyard and we love it very dearly. So we all kind of have our niche with our specialty. Stan's very outdoor oriented, very project oriented. He has a background as a general contractor, so very capable of building fences and structures and things of that nature, and was really happy to take on the cattle herd when we started down that road. Jeannie has a background in medicine, and her interest in Ramstead, not her interest in Ramstead, but her inspiration to get farming and ranching started was the progression and decline, actually, that of health that she saw in her patients year over year coming through the medical field. That over the years, the standard American diet was not treating her patients well, and that was a real red flag that maybe we ought to be doing things differently. And for me, my interest was really started when I was in college. I grew up kind of in a just normal suburban background. None of us have come from farming and ranching, by the way. We all chose this. It was an adventure, and it was a choice to grow foods, first vegetables, but then proteins as well. And that I really clued in college that we as humans should have the opportunity to choose foods that are good for the planet. Like it was really frustrating to look around and see that once you kind of drew the curtain back, that most of the foods that are available to most people are actually damaging to the planet or damaging to our bodies. And that just, it doesn't have to be like that. And so that was kind of the inspiration way back when. We also have a really awesome team here at Ramstead. So this is us pictured with some of our employees. During the busy season when everything's hustling and bustling and we're doing farmers markets on a regular basis, we're up to about 15 people that live in or that work here. And then in the winter time, it's a bit slower. And so we're usually down to a staff of between 8 and 10. So it's not just us here doing everything. It's definitely an awesome network of people who love the different aspects of the ranch, who are here for, health reasons, who are here because they love the sort of the environment, our the family friendly jobs that is here. And we really are a network and a team as a group, and that's hard to find when it comes to employment, especially up in a rural area like ours. Yeah. So what we do as a business technically these days is we describe ourselves as a direct consumer meat business. So we're actually raising the meat, taking it to the butcher, having them cut and wrap it to our specs, but then we turn around and we take that meat, bring it back here, and then sell direct to customers. So we have a very one-on-one relationship with our customers, whether they're local people that come here to the farm to pick up, or whether they're meeting us at a farmer's market in Spokane or Coeur d'Alene area, or whether we're shipping door to farm to door. So every week we ship boxes of meats across Washington, in the region, into Idaho and Oregon, but then also across the 48 states and now into Alaska as well, actually. So that's a growing, thriving thing. COVID really made that sort of almost necessary in order to reach people to get them food and things like that. That really helped grow a lot of local food connections in spite of the problems that came with it. But we've demonstrated that it's continued to be a viable business structure as well. So that's what we do today. But I would say much more importantly is why we do it. And again, I've kind of hinted at our inspiration for Ramstead is that at the heart of everything, we believe everyone deserves food that nourishes their body and heals the planet. Bottom line, that should be an option for people to choose. Maybe we can't all do it every day, 365, 3 meals a day, but if we can find those kinds of sources, then we're all contributing to a better future for everyone. And so, when we talk about agriculture, there's lots of different methods, and I use words like management a lot. What that means is how we treat our land, how we treat our animals, so that we can have different outcomes. And so the way we manage our land is something that we call regenerative agriculture. And the simple definition of regenerative agriculture is that it improves the health of the ecosystem by mimicking nature. We're constantly looking at nature as a source for inspiration. How do we plug into nature so that we can harmonize with it rather than work against it? And we look for systems and ways to foster diversity, to respect all life, not just ourselves, not just our animals, but the grasses, the birds, the trees, the water, and what we call our invisible livestock, which is all of the microbes that are in the soil. That's a big part of how we think about how we're treating our land. Are we creating an environment where our soil can be healthy and living and thriving? And then also, like nature, how do we adapt? That's a fundamental principle that if we're stuck in our ways, we're going backwards. So that's a big piece of regenerative agriculture. And that's really different than how a lot of farming and agriculture is practiced. So a little bit of kind of compare and contrast the problems versus the solution. When it comes to industrial agricultural practices, they typically deplete soil. And by depleting, that means in most cases, they're reducing the carbon or the organic matter that's in the soil over time, which leads to nutrient poor food. And it necessitates high capital investments, large scale production, and significant barriers to entry for others. So when we think about agriculture, big industrial agriculture, it's just that, it's big. There's giant tractors that are, 6 figures to purchase, and they require loans that strap farmers and ranchers into debt, that they are now become part of this kind of vicious cycle where you've got to throw down a bunch of capital in order to harvest grain or harvest products from larger and larger acreage in order to make a profit and survive for another year, another decade like that. So these are sort of the stereotypical things we see in industrial ag. By contrast, Regenerative practices build soil carbon. And so it's that soil carbon and the organic matter in the soil that help retain water, that help feed microbial life, that helps sequester more carbon because you're feeding healthier plants. And so it's this sort of cycle that, if done right, can grow and build and repeat those cycles that we want to see more and more of, so that more carbon can get sequestered. When it rains, we're capturing all those rains and we're not seeing runoff go away off the farm and into streams. We want those healthy plants, those healthy grasses, capturing sunlight, capturing water, holding it in place, shading the ground so that when we have high heat, middle of summer drought, the ground below is more protected and better able to hold water and, again, manage those invisible livestock, those microbes in the soil, so that they can continue to thrive and help feed the grasses and feed the animals. We also prioritize animal well-being. So as much as possible, they're out on pasture, they're grazing, doing what they're designed by nature to do, not stand inside a building, but be outside grazing, catching sunlight or finding shade, like that. And then we also invite collaborative community participation. We're not here to defend a paradigm or argue our position. We're here to ask questions and learn more and see different perspectives about how we can get our work done, how we can, anything. Just really, we're lifelong learners. So it's not about this is how we do things. It's how can we better do things going forward? What can we learn? Some more compare and contrast. I think we're likely aware of concentrated animal feeding operations. They're here in Washington, they're across the country, where animals are contained in fences. They're not grazing. They're standing in pens. When water hits those pens, runoff happens. That's a flooding, and the concentration of animal fertilizer that goes away with rainwater heads towards streams, heads towards riverways. That's what this aerial picture is on the left-hand side, where we're looking from above at the runoff that happens when you get this many animals focused in one area, one physical area, and they're not moving across the land. That's in stark contrast to the way animals evolved in nature. If you think about bison migrating across the plains, they're in a constant phase of movement. They show up to fresh green grass, they graze, they trample, they sleep, and they basically create chaos in that area. But then they're driven on by the need for more food. They're driven on by a predator. They're driven on by weather, but ultimately they're moving. And so that is the fundamental difference between industrial agriculture when it comes to raising animals versus what we practice, which is on the right-hand side. You can see an aerial view of our property. We've got a water, a pond that's fenced out so that animals aren't constantly going to the water and creating excess nutrients, fertilizer, AKA fertilizer, near the water. So the water is clean and protected. And then these tiny little dots that are kind of on the lower central left corner are mobile chicken tractors. And so this is a picture that Google Earth caught, where the chicken tractors are actually moving forward every day. And you can see their little pathway behind them where they're leaving a little bit of fertilizer behind, and that in turn feeds the soil. The grass is able to bounce back, and there's not a buildup of chicken poo-poo in their wake. So it's actually a really great system. And around them, the cattle are able to graze, and we move them using electrical fences. So portable electrical fences. So it's a real simple, thin wire. It's very light. You can reel it up it's kind of like a giant fishing wheel. And you pick up and move these fences, so that in a sense, we're acting as though we are the predators pushing the animals forward around the pasture. But the bottom line is we're creating movement so that nothing builds up. There's no stagnation. And fundamentally, once we move on, the land is allowed to rest. And that's a huge, huge piece of this. On the right-hand side, the land never gets rest. It just gets overuse, build up, and that becomes toxic. On the right-hand side, we're grazing, we're interacting with the soil, we're feeding it with animal nutrients, fertilizer, right? And then we're moving on and letting it rest so that the microbes can flourish, the root systems can flourish, the grass can grow up and collect more soil to create, not more soil, I'm sorry, more solar, they're solar collectors, catching more sunlight um, to do photosynthesis and turn around and feed the microbes in the soil again. Likewise, a lot of pigs in the country, most of the pigs in the country live indoors, inside buildings. We like to have them outside. They have trees, they have shade, they have their choice of both. They romp around. If you've never been around livestock, pigs are absolutely active. They're almost like dogs. They love to run, they love to romp. And it's really a joy to be around them, and they're very inquisitive. That's Stan there letting the pigs kind of inspect his shoes. So we like to be kind and encourage those behaviors and give them plenty of room to be active and inquisitive and express express what they're supposed to express, be the animals that they were designed to be. And let's see, part of when we think about what role do farmers and what role does agriculture play in things like climate change, inequality in the world. I think in general, small farms like ours are poised to really impact climate in a positive way. Like, we're small, we're agile, we're very adaptive. And because we are part of our community, we're here for it all. So a lot of large industrial agriculture is a bit more removed, it's more remote. But here as a small farm, we're able to diversify the local food supply because we're right in it. We're at farmers markets, we're supporting local butchers, we're supporting local processors. And so when things like COVID happened, there was a huge disruption in the larger supply chain in the country. However, every small farm in America went, hey, this is what we do. Like, we're available for this. And so I think we really got to see the validity of what small farms can do when it comes to actually feeding our population. We also are poised to promote transparency and accountability because we are so close to our community. If you're at a farmer's market and you can approach your farmer with direct questions, you can see their pictures of their ranch, you can visit their ranch. All of that facilitates, like pulling the curtain back and looking behind the scenes and going, how is my food really raised? What's really happening here? And can also give a voice to some of these issues. Like Marianne was talking about, just coming back from a conservation meeting, there's a lot of things that are contentious about land use and agriculture, and it doesn't have to be, particularly when you can talk to someone who has a real experience on one side of the issue or the other, putting a face and a voice to, hey, this is my neighbor who may have a differing opinion than I do, but I can at least understand, how do these things impact your world, your business, your family, and land. It really opens up a possibility to having a true conversation and not an argument at an arm's length, or worse yet, at computer's length, where we tend to say things that we wouldn't say to each other when we're actually having a real face-to-face discussion. And additionally, small farms in our communities, we demonstrate avenues for new farmers and ranchers. It's to think about becoming a farmer and a rancher. When I was a kid, it was a pipe dream. My parents were military and my mom was a nurse, and it was like, farming and ranching is something people are born into, period. There's no, you can watch movies about it, but that's it. Well, you come to find out, you meet people who've done it, and it can be a reality. So I think for those reasons, small farms really are in a beautiful place to contrast, to help people see the differences between large scale agriculture and what small scale agriculture can do can do for us, can do for our communities and do for our people and our land. Likewise, this is, a women's group that we're interested in. So it's also huge, a very important thing for people to see women-owned farms. I think the significance here is because, we're humans, we all are, and we have tendencies, and we have to overcome those tendencies within ourselves to get kind of stuck and kind of, I would say almost complacent with accepting what is common. And when things like agriculture they tend to be professions and industries that tend to be male dominated. We tend to assume as humans that that's just the way it is. And it takes seeing other people who are like us to reinvigorate our mind and go, yeah, I can do that too. Or there are people like me who are in ag, who are doing this, who are, who are thriving. And so it's important that we see those faces. It's important that we celebrate those voices, because just like we mimic nature, we need diversity. If agriculture in the United States is going to thrive and is going to be sustainable and regenerative, it's got to be diverse. And so we want to, as small farmers, we want to foster that diversity. We also want to encourage collaboration and inclusion. If we're all swapping the same ideas that we've always swapped, we're going backwards. And we also want to highlight and make actionable those unique perspectives. It's not just some dumb idea. It's, hey, this is something we all the time, we as a team here at Ramstead, we're often our business is structured so that we try to flatten our organizational structure and bring people's ideas to the table. So even people that we hire to help pack those boxes and get them packed for FedEx to come pick up on Tuesday, we still want to know what they think about rotating cattle, or how do you think we should build this pig water. We want their ideas because sometimes it's something new and different we've never thought of. You never know what skill set people have. It's easy to make assumptions that, hey, they're here to be a fulfillment employee, but people can impress you with what they know, where they've been, and what they can contribute to make your life easier. So let's hear it. When it comes to small scale livestock, they actually provide a really unique opportunity for small scale entry level farming and ranching, particularly chickens. That was what we got started in because we didn't have a background in agriculture. And Stan said, he quoted, I love this quote, is, hey, let's try this out. If nothing else, it's easy to get out of the chicken business. If we hate it, we're not stuck. We haven't invested in a bunch of cattle fencing and panels and working equipment. You can start small and try it, see if you like it. But what's also amazing is that you can produce quite a lot of food on a small piece of property with very simple, appropriate technology equipment. It doesn't take much. So when I think about livestock, and I think about in particular groups that are marginalized and don't have a large seat at the table when it comes to agriculture, I think livestock are particularly poised to invite more people in, particularly small animals, small ruminants, and chicken. So it's important to understand, though, that those opportunities are there when they are coupled with the appropriate technology. These funny looking pens that we have, we call them chicken tractors. Some you may have heard if you read anything about the homestead movement. A lot of people use these little they call them chicken tractors, because it's a pen that you can actually, they're portable and you drag them forward across your backyard or whatnot to spread the chicken manure out, keep the birds protected. So they're not fully free range, because there's things like raccoons, there's aerial predators, there's wind, there's rain, there's snow. So you have to keep the birds protected. But in this way, they're able to move on to a fresh new pasture every day. They're getting sunshine, they're getting shade. they're getting fresh air. There's no terrible feather buildup or dust buildup that's harming their lungs. And most importantly, they're getting fresh greens every day, which adds an incredible amount of nutrition to their meat. And so that's something I haven't mentioned yet, is that the distinction between animals that have been raised on concrete in a building or on a dirt lot versus animals that have been grazing fresh pasture. There's a huge nutritional difference where the animals that are on pasture, their fats in their bodies are more balanced. So the omega-6s and the omega-3s in their body are level, versus animals that are on concrete or in buildings that are only eating a grain diet are very out of balance, and the omega-6s are very high. And the reason that's important is that omega-6 fats are the inflammatory fats. Omega-3s, like that are in fish oil and the supplements that we take that are good for you fats, they fight inflammation. And so when they're out of balance, the human body reacts to that with inflammation as well. But if we can get those back in balance, then we're getting a nutrition that is actually our bodies are able to better synthesize and not have to overcome in order to enjoy the nutrition and the nutritional benefits. A big pinch point when it comes to livestock is access to butchering. That is local, and that's also culturally inclusive. And so again, this is where small ag has the opportunity to provide a big win. Processing, again, when COVID was it was of course a problem, but it was a blessing in that it really stress tested our systems. And the biggest problem when it came to our food system, and in particular the meat industry, was butchers were overrun. They were just flat bottleneck, especially as their employees were sick. Local access to local butchering is a big pinch point. And so if we can get these smaller, if we can get folks raising smaller flocks, smaller livestock, and accessing local butchers, then we're able to supplement our supply chain and make it much more resistant and resilient to problems. So the other piece of that is inviting new farmers into small scale livestock, is that it's important to transfer the knowledge to ensure that the nutrient density and the regenerative management happens. I say that as a cautionary thing, because just because we're small farmers doesn't mean we're divine. It doesn't mean that we know it all. It doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes and have problems like mud building up, animal mistreatment, animal cruelty. And, we're all ignorant. And when we get in over our heads, it's the land that suffers and it's the animals that suffer. So it's important that this knowledge transfer comes with new farmers getting into livestock. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't come across as I'm painting this rosy tale, because it's hard. It's a skill set. It's learned. You make mistakes, and it's important to have mentors. It's important to have a community that are there to help, because there'll be days that you're tired, that you're exhausted, and animals need to be cared for. And when things start to get neglected, it's the animals and it's the land that eventually suffer. A big piece of agriculture and small farms, and particularly raising livestock and ranching with animals. I use the word farming and ranching very interchangeably, but there's a lot of people in agriculture that say, oh no, farming is all crops, ranching is all animals. Well, that's fine, but I use the word interchangeably. So when we're talking about farming and ranching with animals, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how animals impact climate change. And yes, there's a lot of negative impact. I would say, hands down, we've as a society, we've really neglected how animals are treated and how the land is treated when it comes to ranching. And we've given ourselves a black eye, because there's a lot of people that push back and say, hey, if we want to change this, if we want to improve climate change to the positive, animals should not be part of our diet. We should just get rid of it. And that's okay. I think I'm not here to argue anybody's approach. But what I will say is it's not so important for me whether it's animals or plants or what have you. The real question is, how are they raised? In general, my question is, how are we going to feed ourselves from agricultural practices that prioritize healthy soils, healthy living soils, that increase biodiversity in nature, and that minimize the fossil fuel emissions via harvest and transport? And so you can with very good intentions to reduce your carbon footprint, say, I'm not going to eat meat protein. Okay, that's fine. But if you then turn and say, okay, I'm going to do, I'm going to do plant-based meat replacement. Well, where's that coming from? Is it coming from a monocrop soy field? Because I don't believe that that's helping increase biodiversity in nature. And yes, it may be not, maybe you're not harming a cow, but those soy fields are definitely not in harmony with nature. And so I put this picture of this cycle, carbon cycle here, because we think about a lot about the impact that vehicles have, and we also kind of say, okay, well, the cows are contributing a lot of negative impacts too. But what we don't talk about is how this biomass here in the center sequesters carbon and stores it in the soil. And when raised right, cattle really fuel this cycle where we're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of grasses we can grow in our pastures, which in turn sequesters carbon and helps that cycle. And what's beautiful about pasture is that it happens year over year and over year. So it's not just, oh, one crop has grabbed carbon out of the air and put it in the soil. It's doubling down every year. The more carbon we put in the soil, the more plants we can grow. So we can put more carbon in the soil so we can grow more plants. And so it's this really cool build that happens. And it's because of the animals. We couldn't do that if we didn't have the animals grazing. We'd have to be applying fertilizers. Where are those fertilizers coming from? That's a take action. Whereas the cows are giving back, and we're running in symbiosis. And so in the long run, how do we implement change? If what we want to see are more small farms, more regenerative agriculture, if we feel like, hey, that's really the way we go, how do we do more of that? It happens, and I mean literally one meal at a time. It's know your farmer, know their values, celebrate small wins, and invite participation. I'm definitely of the opinion that it's not an all or nothing game. It is, what can I do? How can I start? Is it one meal? Is it going to my farmer's market once a month? Is it getting a subscription box from a farmer that I know their values are? Do I get it once a month? Maybe it's every 2 months, but where to start? And it doesn't mean cleaning out your pantry and throwing all the labels away or saying, I'm never going to eat box food. It's start small. How can you get started with knowing a farmer, having that connection, and being able to see, hey, if every time I eat a salad from this farm, this is what I'm contributing to. This is the fallout from that. This is my community that they're feeding me, but I'm feeding them. And how do we get those cycles going? And from there it can grow. If the barrier is your schedule, if you work a lot, you can mention it to coworkers, and that helps grow. If your barrier is dollars, again, maybe it's a farm that you can go volunteer at a little bit, and you meet other people that you can bring other people to the farm that you're volunteering at. It's that all of that helps grow. And so if this is what you feel is the way we should be doing it, is how we proceed and how we implement change, there's so many ways to help and to to be part of the change. So yeah, it's kind of fundamentally, how do we make the natural choice more natural? How do we make it easy? How do we make it fun? How do we make it synergistic? And how do we do more of it? So that's kind of it for my slides. And here's to inspirational change for all of us. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. That was really, really,
I
really.
just realized that I should have had a timer. We're doing fine. It's 7:40.
No,
Okay.
we're doing
Woo!
good.
I was
You
thinking,
can, I
it
know.
could be 8:30. I don't know.
Yeah, everybody wants to take note of that. We're also this is also recorded, but Eileen's information is there. You can leave it up for just a minute and then we'll stop sharing the screen.
Sure. Yeah.
I have the first question and then I'll let other people ask. So, you know, we're trying to live in balance with everything, all the animals, etc. And this one thing that I heard from the conservation district that I kind of shared with you, there's ranchers, especially people raising animals, cattle, and some of them are struggling for many reasons, right? But the wolves. Wolves are starting to move from Canada on down, and some of it is from development. Some of it might be that they're looking for change or looking for food from climate change. They have a real concern about it and their cattle and these wolves. And I asked one person who was very concerned, who was a farmer, a cattle farmer. I said, did you lose any? Have you lost any? No, not me. But I guess it's happening around. So what is your thought on that? And then I'll let other people ask.
Sure. It's a really hot topic. And our solution has been multifold, multi-pronged. We do have wolves in our area. And it's been, in part, we have livestock guardian dogs, a specific breed that's very adept at, we call them property managers, because they're very alert. They seem like they sleep all day and then they work all night. And so they're nothing is foolproof, but what our approach has been is to make our ranch less desirable for predators to come snack. There's lots of other options out in the wild. What can we do to make noise that they don't like, to make movement that they don't like? So our regenerative agriculture lends itself to being a bit, I won't say predator proof. I don't think there's a thing in the world that's predator proof, but it's many actions that help repel predators and wolves. Yeah, I mean, it is a real threat when it comes to livestock ownership. There's been farmers and ranchers who have been hit very hard. But there's also methods that can be used to help mitigate that. And so I think that's really our approach, is to get proactive. They're here, they're part of the ecosystem. Yeah. And whether you're for or against them, it's not important for me to spend my energy there. It's important for me to go, how do I harmonize? Yeah. And when I say me, I mean we. That's our ranch's approach, is how do we plug into nature?
Excellent. Thank you. That's a great answer. Anybody else have any questions? I can see.
You can probably take it off, share screen.
Oh, sure.
Just so we can see each other better.
There we go. More faces.
Marie, I saw you come off mute, but I also have so many questions. I have so many logistics questions, just because I'm curious about this whole entire thing. I would own a cow for sure. It would be the longest living cow you've ever met. He was my buddy. I would hang out with him all the time. But I do eat meat, and I am interested in how this is sustainable. So I'm gonna rattle off a bunch of questions.
Sure.
Most of them are logistic. You just pick and choose. So I'm curious that, are you do you just only sell and I guess, are your customers only like residential, or do you have other like commercial opportunities? Like, are you in restaurants? Like, are restaurants using your services? How do you get more animals? Like, are they doing like the natural way, and like you harvest a few that you know are replacing themselves? Like, is it that natural kind of balance? You take the ones that are coming in. Mobile chicken coops, never heard of that. Love it. Super excited about that. How did you discover all of this? Like, have all these things been done before and you're just like picking and choosing? Or are you combining and innovating ideas on your own? How many employees do you have? And how long ago did you start? I'm sorry, I wrote them all down so I wouldn't interrupt you, but I'm super excited about this.
That's
so
great. No,
if you want me
I
to
think
repeat them, I will, but like pick and choose whatever sounds interesting to you.
I think I can get them all on the rundown, and it's kind of like a good story. So we started back on the 2-acre property. I'm going to say 2006, and Stan and Jeannie were already doing like beautiful or raised beds with veggies, and we came across this book. It's called Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. And at the same time, Food Inc., the original Food Inc., was brand new, and it was like. We were introduced to kind of a zany farmer from the East Coast. His name's Joel Salatin, and he has Polyface Farm, which is a funny name, but it really just means a bunch of different animals. It's not just a cow farm. It's we do chickens and pigs, and it was like, wow, all of these animals rotating around. And so a lot of our original, the chicken tractors and the sort of small tools and things like that, we learned from Joel Salatin or people like him. And we also got a mentor, which is like ding 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 ding. That's the fast track to success, is to find yourself an awesome mentor that you can go help them out. You can take classes from them. You can go volunteer. There's no better way to learn than from somebody who's actually doing it. People who are doing it the way you want to, but also people who are maybe doing what you want to do, and maybe they're not quite doing it your style. There's still so much to learn. You'll be amazed at what you can pick up that is like, wow, I never would have done it that way. That's, and then you'll see things that like, I am never going to do that. Look how hard, like they're working way too hard, or, the good and the bad, learn it all. And so, yeah, so that was 2006 that we got started. And so let's see, we grew, we added a couple lambs, small livestock. Again, they're easy to handle. You don't have to start with a big cow. You can start with something small because the fencing is lighter, it's more portable, it's easier. The tools are smaller, they're cheaper. But then you can graduate up until you're like, I'm ready for my first cow. And so then you also asked about, and there's so many people who are doing this now. You can on YouTubes and things like that, about learning things like the chicken tractor. There's different models. There's a Suscovich tractor. There's the Salatin model, so they all kind of have their different names. It's like Fords and Chevys. And then at this point, we kind of grew through a phase where we built up, and we're like, okay, we're raising our own. We got a cow calf herd, so we're having babies every year, and we're gonna grow those babies up and then butcher them. And we got to a point where we had mama pigs, baby pigs, a boar, which is a male pig. We had mama cows, a bull, calves, teenage cattle, which are a whole different class. We had mama ewes, lambs, rams, and then we had chickens and turkeys. And it was the slap of overwhelm hit us. And like, if you get into farming and ranching, you're going to find that slap of overwhelm. Like, I guarantee that's just part of the growth curve, where you're so excited, you're going to do all the things, and you're like, this is so beautiful. And then year 2, you're sweating. Year 3, you're like, what did I sign up for? And so at that point, it was like, if we want to keep growing, and we want to do more regenerative agriculture, and we want to do this in a way that's regenerative for us too, so that we can rest and rejuvenate ourselves, we're going to have to start partnering. And so at this point, we have partner farmers who have the mamas and the babies, and then we take on their babies in order and finish them, is what it's called. They basically, you're fattening them as they're older, and then taking them to butcher. So we graduated out of that because there's only so much ground and you've got to treat it right. But your farm has to be big enough to support itself too. So, and what's cool, you know, at first it was like, gosh, we don't want to get rid of the cows. We love them. We built up this herd. We had a real relationship with our bull. Stan can attest to this. It was a very hard day to say goodbye to the cow calf herd. But in the end, it's not a few months later where you realize, wow, now we're bringing other small farmers and ranchers with us. So now we have these new partnerships with other regenerative agriculture partnerships, and it's quality is super important for us. So, and because we're doing grass-fed and grass-finished beef, grass-fed, grass-finished lamb, and everything when it comes to poultry and pork is pasture raised. It's important for us to find partnerships with people that are raising animals the same way, have the same sets of values. So it's this cool networking thing that, you know, we didn't expect when we're doing it all ourselves. But now that we've made that transition, it's like, whoa, this tide is rising. This is really cool.
So do you have restaurants?
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the question I didn't get was we have a 1 or 2 restaurants locally. It is a challenge to find restaurants that understand what we're doing and are able to turn around and sell it to their customers too. They do have to charge a premium. I mean, it costs more by comparison to raise food this way, period. And so people value it. People are willing to pay the difference if they know it, but you also have to, as part of the business, is educating and communicating that to people so they know what they're getting, they know why it's different. And they are so excited about it that they come back and they bring friends with them, which is, you know, it's part of the storytelling and part of what we do. But yes, a couple of restaurants here in the Spokane area, a couple of very small, like grocery stores, like very, very small, you know, they've got like raw milk in their fridges and have the natural products. And so they have a client base that would be seeking out grass-fed beef. And then we've also partnered with quite a few schools in our area. There's a really great farm to school program where they're prioritizing putting locally raised fruits and veggies and proteins in school lunches. And it's just really awesome. Again, that's like something that we could not have predicted. And the partnerships and the relationships have been great.
That's excellent. I'd like to hear that the schools are eating better. So, I'm gonna wait. Stephanie, did you get your question?
Yes, but I think Marie has questions too. So definitely.
I know. And if anybody else has questions, just raise the hand so we can get to you. And if we go over a little bit and people need to get off the call, that's fine. But we're going to finish with, you know, getting all the questions answered.
Yeah, we're happy. I can go long. I'm happy to hang out.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Marie.
Stephanie, can I chime in just for a sec? You asked something about how the land did. We have probably a 25-acre pasture that 5 years ago would properly finish 50 cows. Today that same piece of ground will do 100 cows. The ground is healed so much and the biomass is so much thicker. And then when we did have to diversify or change our business model and go to partner producers for some of the animals, that was a hard day, but the satisfaction that I didn't anticipate it, but to bring other small farms with us is that satisfaction to make that contribution is, I can't describe how rewarding that is.
Thank you. Go ahead, Marie.
I very much enjoyed hearing about your operation. And I've seen chicken tractors on the farms around me. I just know what they were called. So now I have a name for those. They are in use around here. My questions were, you didn't mention, are you certified organic?
We're not.
Okay, because I heard regenerative, but you're not certified. You're not using, you are, I'm sure, using some organic practices, but you're not using all. Is that
right?
accurate?
Right. And so what we say is we self-certify by inviting customers to come see the animals. there's some interesting aspects of organic certification that, number one, would prevent us from partnering with a lot of our farmers. They would have to be certified organic. You know, everything along the way has to be certified. And so I applaud people that are, and businesses that go for it. It's just not realistic for us in our community. And the other piece of it is a lot of what the organic standards have to say is what not to do. It's all about, you can't use this, you can't use that. And whether or not you agree with those standards or not, you know, there's some gray lines with the chemicals that are being allowed now. But more importantly, they don't say anything about animal welfare for the most part. And it's more important to us that those animals are out in pasture with their heads down, eating grass and interacting with the land in a way that's just supreme. And so that's where we spend our energy and our time, and try to show our customers, because that's a big part of it, is we want our customers to see, hey, this is what's possible. This is what your food can do for the land, for your body, that kind of thing. Was that all of that question, Marie, or was there more to it?
Just briefly, one was curious about water conservation. I know that's always, I'm curious what sort of things you found that are helpful for water conservation.
More grass, that's number one. And so again, it's really about in my mind, there's two types of conservation that we think about in terms of our water. One is keeping streams protected, keeping our ponds protected. And so that comes with, we fence out everywhere we can. We also, our animals do drink from springs, but we're able to bring the spring to them. They're not in the middle of it, fouling it up and that sort of thing. We want to keep that water pristine. We want it pristine for ourselves, and we want it pristine when it leaves the property. And then the other piece is we want to trap every raindrop that falls here so that we can use it now or later. And so, and that's where the more grass comes in, and the more we can grow and get started when it comes to areas that need more help, need regeneration and improvement. You get a little bit of toehold, and it's amazing how that capitulates. When we got here, this property that we're on, we moved from the 2 acres that was down in the Lewiston area, and we moved up to here to Ione, and it had been overgrazed, and there was areas that were just bare, a bit rocky, dusty. We initially started with cutting hay, and Stan would drive the tractor through the hay field to cut hay, and it was, you know, it was a dust cloud, and you'd have to get out and clean the windshield. He'd have to have a bucket with him. Fast forward, I think it was about 3 seasons, and it's just nothing. Like he could drive through, and all we were seeing was seed heads. That was the only dust, was some seed heads. And right across the fence line, the neighbor's place looked the exact same, like nothing had changed there. So it's, you know, the proof is in the pasture. Yeah.
Can I add to that really quick regarding certified organic? And
yes.
I've learned a lot in being with the conservation district. By the way, Stephanie, you can check with your local conservation district for resources, and you know, all that's free, and they'll even come out to your property. The certification, like I use a CSA, community supported agriculture. I have a farmer that I support, which is really critical to keeping these farms alive. But they're not certified organic, but I watched their practices and I visited the farm, and that I realized was what they did was better than what I know they do to certify organic. The certification for organic leaves out a lot of things that are very important for the land and the animals. Okay. So anybody else have a question?
Heather.
See Heather.
Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So looking at your tractors, were those like solar panel type sheets or something? Was I just like, I was just kept anyway. What they
were was, and this was just a total, like, again, you look online, and it at the time the resources were not what they are now, but I found this guy who was making chicken yurts he was down in like New Mexico, I want to say. And so it was actually a rebar loop with chicken wire, and over the top is it's a silver tarp. So
Gotcha.
you
Okay.
you can remove those in the winter time.
Right.
A lot of the chicken tractors are like the Salatin style. It's a flat box and it's made with wood. And in my mind, it was like, I cannot fathom chicken manure and wood in the same space. So and actually it turns out if you're on YouTube, there's a video of us where like we get winds. We're in a river valley, and wind can just come ripping through here. And they're up higher. Our chicken tractors are up higher, and there's not like this. They're not a sail, the wind can just pass through. And so we had this crazy windstorm, and the tractors are just out there, and it's almost like the sea where they're just kind of hanging out and the wind's blowing through and nothing flipped. I mean, you hear these horror stories about wind picking up people's chicken tractors and flipping and leaving the birds exposed when the rainstorm comes through, which is disaster. But yeah, so these were like a yurt model, so they're round and you can drag them. And typically you end up seeing wheels or skids of some kind. So I got some snowboards from like a Goodwill or something, just snowboard bottoms, and we screwed wood on them so that you can prop it under a tractor, drag it. It's like it's like yeah, and that reduces the friction enough to just drag the tractor forward. And if you have 5 or 6 of them, you got one set of snowboard slides that you can just run through and move them. And yeah, there's for every crazy zany farmer at the end of the dirt road, there's a different style of chicken tractor out there.
Oh, we've used the Salatin tractors for years, and that is my constant complaint. There's got to be a better way. They've got like the wheel that flips under, but it always ends up kind of getting at this weird angle, and then it's like, oh my god, it's actually worse than if it just had nothing. Anyway,
yeah, I'd rather just oaf it.
Yeah, I love it. And then my other question was, so we also have we have horses and sheep, and we raise them for meat and for fiber. And we have everybody excluded off of our creek and streams. And right now we drive around with a pickup truck with water tanks and water everybody that way. How are you bringing the streams and the springs to your animals? I think you probably have way more numbers than we do.
Well, so in some cases we do like have a proper well, but that's what we mostly do for like pigs, who are the messiest. But with cattle, it's usually a like a pipe into a trough. Or if they access the creek, it's a small zone. And so it's an alleyway. Like, so if you think about being up above a pasture, if you build an alleyway down the middle, then from that you can have a bunch of different pastures. And so you rotate the animals around the pastures, but they're always getting back on the same alleyway and walk into the one spot of water. And so that's been our probably most of the one where they access the creek. That's how we do it.
Got it.
In that one spot.
Okay, that's cool. We thought about something like that for the horses, actually, with a wetland type. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, the small access point makes sense too for that kind of thing. So interesting. And then how did you choose what breeds you decided to go with? Did you just go with like regular commercial breeds, or did you go with heritage breeds, or how did you?
Yeah, so with pork, it was really a taste thing. What's cool is that the heritage breeds lend themselves to better taste. So if everybody's comfortable, I'm going to talk about eating meat for a minute. And when we're enjoying meats, the flavor comes from activity. Is basically the number one contributor to flavor. And so the longer the animal lives, the more flavor is developed. And so most commercial animals who live in a building have a very short life and very little activity, versus like our pasture pigs. They live longer. They're out there being very active. Their muscles are working. They're athletes. And so that's just a big contributing factor. The other piece of it is fat. Like, we do not shy away from healthy natural fats. So we're not trying to raise lean pork, we're trying to raise natural pork. And so they get heavier than most commercial pork chops. Most commercial pigs are butchered more like 230 pounds, 250. Ours get up to 300. And so there's more fat, which well-raised fat has good flavor contribution as well. And then the other piece of it is with heritage breeds, there's a lot of darker meats that are richer in flavor as well. And so with our pigs, you asked about breeds, we did stick with Berkshire, or Berkshire Cross would be a good way to go as well. They're a lot of heritage breeds are better adapted to be outdoors because they're sort of the older varieties that were bred to be real farm animals back before we started putting animals in buildings and didn't want them to grow any fat and didn't need them to have hair to protect them from the weather because they're always indoors. So so Berkshire pork is the breed we go there. When it comes to beef, most of the beef end up being Angus, but we're not dedicated to a beef breed as much as we are to the phenotype, which is the fancy way for saying what they look like, what their body structure is, what their profile is, because animals, we're conserving energy as often as possible because we want animals to gain weight and easily on grass. So when you think about an industrial farm, a concentrated animal feeding operation, they're putting cheap calories, corn, grain, high energy calories, and sometimes random food byproducts and things on an animal. They want a big frame that they can hang those cheap calories on because it's cheap, make them big, like that sort of thing. It's what we want is an animal that's shorter, that has less frame to support with calories. Like if I got a lot of bones and a lot of body structure that I have to build and maintain with my calories, every time I take a bite, if 75% of that's going to my bones and the stuff I need to breathe and that sort of thing, I'm not going to gain very much weight. But if I'm shorter and squattier, a mouthful of grass is going to convert more efficiently to muscle and fat, which is more delicious. It's less stressful, and they're able to gain weight on grass, which is what they do in nature. So long answer to, it's not so much about the breed. You can have an Angus that's tall and lanky that belongs in that's not going to get fat on grass. You're going to have to feed them grain in order for them to finish and be more delicious. But you can also have a short squatty Angus that gains weight every time they walk by the clover. And that's the animal we want.
What did you do for your chickens and sheep?
Yeah, chickens, we like the Cornish crosses. When you raise Cornish crosses on grass, they're healthy. For everybody who doesn't know about livestock, Cornish crosses kind of have a bad rap because they're not genetically engineered, but they've been adapted and bred over time to gain weight very fast. They're a commercial bird. And they can overeat themselves. And hi, Deb. They can overeat. They can have problems. They can have physical problems where their legs give out because they've grown so fast. But if you're raising them on pasture where they're getting exercise and they're walking to water and they're eating grass and they're not just laying by their corn hash, they're much healthier and they grow nice sized breasts. They're not lean. They're not, the meat's not chewy. There are alternative chicken varieties that are designed to be slower growing, but they're not as palatable to most people. They're kind of like a niche bird that some people love. Some people really swear by them, but I think Cornish crosses raised on pasture are amazing. And with our sheep, we're also interested in wool. We love it. That was really part of our original adventure. And so we have Romney sheep that are a great dual purpose sheep. So delicious, mild meat, and they do grow wool. There's also the option, there's a whole school of sheep raising that is, I never want to touch wool. I don't want to have to shear. And there's awesome hair breeds for that, where the sheep actually shed naturally. So, yeah.
Well, Cedrice.
Yeah, Cedrice, you had a question.
Yeah, I do. So for students like myself who are just kind of learning about the importance of soil science,
Mhm.
and just agriculture in general. As you, I guess this applies to everyone who's in the industry too, as we're all looking at the future of farming or the future of regenerative farming, where would you say the need is for certain skill sets?
Everywhere. The need is, I mean, it's abundant. And I mean, there's nowhere that a farm, let me just speak from my experience. A farm has, that's on the rise, that we're doing great. We want to find more customers. We want the business to be, we want our ranch, our farm to also be a business. We want to be a leader in regenerative agriculture. We want to make sure that what we're doing is in fact improving the soil. I can't think of a skill set that I couldn't take advantage of if an eager person showed up and said, I don't know how I can help you. I'm just excited and tell me what to do. I would go, what can you do? And if it's soil science, great. You know what I need? I need you to help me make an annual plan so that we could evaluate our, have some kind of science-based, research-based, regular monitoring so that we can go, look, we're Ramstead Ranch, we're regenerative agriculture strategists, and we can demonstrate that over the last 10 years, our bird population has diversified 125%. Here's the species that we saw 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and today, that kind of thing. Or if it's soil samples, whatever, like I need help telling the story, because there's so many, right? There's so many aspects of what we're doing I would love to share about our ranch. I just don't have time to focus on all of it. Community culture, the learning that goes on here. I mean, we have on-farm events, and you wouldn't believe the diversity of people who are here elbow to elbow skirting fleeces. And it's like, I'm not going to even bring up politics, because the people standing elbow to elbow would, it would just, they couldn't believe that they were enjoying each other's company, is what I'm trying to say. And this is what happens when you're doing, real work with the land and the animals, and suddenly you don't have time for that kind of thing, because we're busy and we're growing things together. So that's the social aspect of it. There's animal science. So Dries, I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of answering your question, but I mean, I feel like I was a young person who was like, I don't know what to do, but I would love to help. And if I would have just shown up on a ranch's doorstep with that, and just said that, somebody would have picked me up in my first 5 self presentations of, I don't know what you need, but I'm here. So I'd have been like, you carry this bucket and we'll figure it out.
Kate, you had a question. Nope, you did not. Did you get your question answered, Cedrice?
Yeah, I was going to say yes, you answered it. What it sounded like was there's a lot of different aspects on a farm, and people have, I think everyone has different skill sets, and every aspect requires some sort of skill set. However, there's not one that's more or less important. There's not one that's more or less popular. Everything is needed.
Yeah, everything's needed. And so much of it, I mean, one of the kind of prompt questions originally was, what are the challenges facing small farms? And one of the biggest challenges is that it's a vertically integrated business where we're farmers. If we're raising animals, we've got cows, that's one business enterprise. If we've got pigs, that's a second business enterprise. If you've got chickens, that's a third business enterprise. Okay, if you're shipping, well, that's a meat business. All of those things have business requirements that involve spreadsheets, that involve Word documents, that involve marketing. And most college kids can do that stuff in their sleep, or, in the last hour before they're supposed to turn it in, right? Which is stuff that farmers and ranchers don't have time for, or that's not their first language. And if I just had somebody for data entry, that understood spreadsheets, like, here's a pile of things. If you could handle this, and you'll get to know the ranch, and you'll know, you'll get to see, like, by the way, I also have this skill set, and I could help you out here. Like, I could do this project for you or whatever. Like, I could see the potential where I could help you bring more customers to your farm, because that's what I started to say is the problem with most small farms is we've got to be a business too. And it's hard to be a business after all the farming and ranching happens. It's hard to go back to your office and now invite more customers to your farm, or, that kind of thing. So I think it's really that area that people underestimate when they get into this, and then have a hard time. It's the hardest thing to follow through with. And I think that's probably true for any business owner. That's not unique to farms and ranches, but I know it's true for farms and ranches.
Yeah, there's some huge opportunities in the industry. If you're very outdoorsy, you really would be pursuing an understanding of that cycle, the whole cycle of regenerative ag. If you're like numbers, there's a huge opportunity. Very few ag people really understand their margins, the difference between overhead, direct costs, how to get them column right, how to understand your margins. And if you want to be sustainable, you have to understand. So there's a whole opportunity on the business side. We've created a situation where we have to get our head around all of it. Somebody does, but there's real opportunity on the nature side. You could never quit learning. You're always trying to figure out how to plug in. There's more microbes in a handful of soil than there is people on the earth. And it's a billion-year-old intelligence down there trying to do its thing, trying to understand how to support that. I'm a big believer. Nature loves to give free rides. It's our challenge is to learn how to plug into that instead of interfere with it. So understanding that whole cycle that Eileen's presented for the last hour. Or if your preference is an office and numbers, there's a whole opportunity there where you could majorly contribute to a lot of people.
Does anybody, may have to wrap up. Does anybody have maybe some last questions, or are we?
I don't have any questions, but this was riveting. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Great
Oh,
job, Eileen.
It was one of our better, I think. Anyway, I learned so much, and honestly, Jean, I want to say, being in the medical field, and we have lost nutrition, folks, in our foods. What you eat, and even if it says it's organic, the nutrition is gone because we've depleted our soils. And so what they're doing is they're putting that back into the soil, and we're benefiting small farms, they are the key, right?
Yeah. Just a minute.
We're good.
I spent about 50 years in an operating room and watched patients get bigger and bigger and bigger and sicker and sicker. And I thought, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with our system. We got to feed people better. Because it's going to bankrupt our medical system, all the obesity and the problems that travel with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone being here. This has been recorded, so we will be sending out the recording.